All right, hi everyone. Uh, Thanks for joining us again here for Job Search Strategies. Um, we're I'm joined by my colleague Chris Smith. Chris, would you like to just sort of briefly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I'm Chris. I run the postdoc office here at NC State and work with Joe and the rest of the professional development team in the grad school. I've been in this role for a year and a half. Before this, I was a postdoc doing neuroscience research. So I'm a neuroscientist by training. And I guess I've thought a lot about career exploration as a postdoc and now in this role. So I'm here to help Joe talk about that with you all.
All right, thanks. And once again, welcome everyone to Job Search Strategies. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So for attendance purposes, for those of you who are joining us through our live stream on YouTube, I've dropped that link into the chat. And then I've also dropped the link into our Zoom channel. So make sure that you sign in so that we can keep track of attendance. All right, so we just wanted to sort of begin this presentation by going over ways to participate, because this is a little bit different than our speaker presentations. So we are going to offer discussion and try to get you engaged. We have, this is an interactive workshop. So we've designed some interactive elements for this so that you can participate and engage with us and engage with the material. The way to do that is to type in and use the chat function, your answers as well as your questions. And on both platforms, we have teams that are monitoring them, and so that they can keep us apprised of your questions and things, and also your discussion as we move forward. All right, so the agenda today is that we're going to start with our self-assessment activities. Then we're going to move into a discussion of resources that we'd like you all to take a look at, and we will post this PowerPoint and provide it to all participants that are part of the email list and registered. So no worries. And then we'll follow all of that with a Q&A session. So there's 3 different activities that we want to do in terms of our self-assessment. That's the dashboard activity to sort of help you with your self-awareness, and then work view and life view, and then the multiverse activity. So Chris, would you like to maybe talk a little bit about the sort of career exploration roadmap and where this starts, or why we're starting here with self-assessment?
Sure. So we can't take credit for this. We borrowed this from UCSF in their MIND program, but I think this is a nice overview of what career exploration looks like, really. I mean, it kind of starts with knowing yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And eventually, after you have kind of figured out who you are and what you value, you'll need to investigate where that might fit in terms of a career. And that's where we get into these reflection questions, thinking about fit, synthesizing what you've learned about different career options with what you want out of your career in your life. And then you may have to reassess. So that's the top light blue part. You might have to come back and reinvestigate, because what you thought a position was like isn't what it really was after you talk to people in the role. But eventually, with enough loops through the investigating, reflecting, and synthesis, you'll hopefully come to a career plan, and that's where you'll be on that little purple part at the bottom, where you'll start to implement the plan. So you'll know what makes you competitive for different careers of your choosing, and how can you build the skills you need to be successful as you approach that finish line of your first career. But yes, it all starts back at the beginning with self-assessment.
Great. All right, so we have a couple activities planned today that are going to help you with self-assessment. But before we begin with the activities, we just wanted to sort of outline our goals and our outcomes for the session. And so when we think about goals as a professional development team, our goals are sort of like more long-term. That is like things that you can take away from the workshop that aren't immediately present. but that will be like more high impact and stay with you throughout the duration of your career. With that in mind, our goals for this particular workshop are for you to understand the value of career exploration, and for you to understand the critical role that self-awareness plays in career exploration. And then our outcomes, when we think about outcomes, we're really talking about the sort of deliverables or the things that you can take away immediately from the presentation. And so the things that we're hoping that you take away today are completing the activities. If you can't do them, we're only here for an hour, so we won't have time to fully do every activity. We would invite you to revisit these activities later on at the conclusion of the workshop. But at least for you to complete some of these activities and also to reflect on them, and then also to provide you with some resources to continue your career exploration. So Chris, I'll let you talk a little bit about the way in which we like to think about the ideal job and how you sort of come to the ideal job.
Thanks, Joe. So a lot of this begins with self-assessment, as we talked about, and we'll talk about some of the different tools you can use, but it's really thinking about what are your skills? So what are you good at? What are your interests, which is what do you want to do? So you might be good at, I don't know, writing computer code, but you may not enjoy that. So obviously we want to find an intersection of what you're good at, your skills, what you're interested in, what your values are, in the sense of, is what you're doing contributing to something you believe in or something that's important to you? And then all this is also layered in your personality. So do you want to be in a work environment where there's a lot of engagement and teamwork because you're sort of extroverted and find that enjoyable? Are you more interested in a role where you can be more independent and work on your own with a lot of autonomy? So kind of thinking about how all of these overlap, how your personality overlaps with your skills, your interests and values will lead to a role where you can thrive, where you can be happy and feel like you're best using your gifts and abilities towards something you care about.
Great. Thank you, Chris. So with that in mind, that is keeping in mind that we want to do a sort of self-assessment, and we want to be self-aware whenever we're starting our career exploration journey. Classically trained early modernist. So I have a quote from John Donne, be thine own palace or the world's thy jail. So where to begin? The place to begin is to sort of know where you are and to begin where you are right now. And so in order to do that, we'd like to sort of walk you through some activities today that will help you sort of take stock of where you are right now. So we have the first one. All of our activities come from Designing Your Life, How to Build a Well-Lived, Joyful Life, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans. And they begin with we've pulled out from the text 3 key activities that we'd like to do today that I think play a really important role and that folks write to them a lot about playing such a key role in their career exploration and life design. So the first activity is this dashboard activity, which is a sort of self-inventory. And what we're going to do is define each of these categories. So work, play, love, and health for you. And then we're going to ask you at the end to sort of tell us where you are right now. So Chris, do you want to maybe take work and then we'll just alternate?
Sure. So obviously a big part of our lives is our work. And so that's thinking about, what do you do? How much fulfillment do you find in your work? Do you work just to pay the bills or do you work for some higher calling? And obviously there's nothing wrong with going down either of those paths, but we want that to be in balance with the other things we're going to talk about. So when you think about work, in your case, you're working as a trainee, a student, or a postdoc, but down the line, you're going to be working in some other position. So I guess you can assess this as in your current work, being a trainee / researcher / scholar. But obviously you should reassess this when you're in a different kind of job. So what is work like at that point? Does it feel fulfilling? Do you see yourself doing this long term? Is it enjoyable?
Yeah. So the key here is that we want you to focus on work, not being just simply what you get paid for, but the work is sort of like what it is that you're doing and how you're sort of currently participating in the sort of ongoing human project. So the category of play is really about joy. It's about the things that you do that get you excited, really energize you. And important sort of distinction here in terms of joy or in terms of play is that there may be like a competitive element to our play, but really the key is that there can be competition and you can, work towards um, wanting to participate and to play in these to sort of play towards like a goal, and there can be goals in play, but the real sort of key element here is that when we think about play, we're really thinking about things that you do for the joy of them, not purely for the competition of it. And so at the end of this, again, we're going to ask you to sort of take an assessment of where you are in these categories right now at this particular moment. So, Chris, do you want to take a? This is perhaps unfair. Do you want to take a? Want to explain love? Rather large request.
Sure. So we're all human beings and social animals, and therefore you're more than just your job. And so this is thinking about who are the people in your life. So that could be a variety of levels here, right? Friendship, romantic love, familial love. But typically you need to be thinking about how are your relationships? How are you interacting with other people? And are those positive and affirming relationships? Or might there be a need to work on some of that, to find some people to add to your life to make it more meaningful and more fulfilling in sort of a social aspect? Because at some point you're going to retire, presumably. And that's where having relationships and love is even more important, because now you have no job or work, at least that you get paid for, to take up that part of your life.
Yeah, it's good, really good. Thanks, Chris. All right, so when we talk about health, or when we're thinking about asking you to sort of assess your health in this moment, it's really holistic. We're thinking about your emotional, your mental, and your physical. And so, pick what we would like you to do right now is to pick one of these categories, and we'll give you, 2 to 3 minutes to sort of think about where you are filling that dashboard out. So I'll roll back through the slides so that you can see the dashboard, but on a sort of scale of 0 to full, maybe 5 points on that scale. Where are you right now with respect to these categories in the ways that we've defined them? I don't think you have enough time in 3 to 5 minutes to sort of write a reflection in each category, but I think we'd like you to focus on maybe one category, not just doing the assessment, but writing a brief little reflective platform, and whatever your sort of like dashboard or whatever your reflections were. And also, if you have any questions at this point, we'll take questions as well. There's some other folks, again, chiming in that with their current situation, this dashboard is certainly being impacted, and we 100% agree. So we're gonna move forward to the next activity that we'd like to do with you all. All right, so the goal of the first activity is really to take stock of where you are right now, in terms of us sort of understanding and reflecting on where you are. The goal of this activity is for you to write 250 words about your work view and your life view. And so we'll sort of define them, and we'll provide a few like writing prompts and give you a little bit more time to sort of think through and respond to some of these writing prompts. The goal here, that what we're aiming for in the activity, is to sort of do a little bit of a measure and analysis, and to see where there are complementary things leads to meaningful life choices being made. So sorry, I went too far. All right, work. Chris, would you like to take work?
Sure. So this kind of gets to the point of your philosophy on what is work for you. So like, why do you work? Do you work for giving back to others? Do you work to earn a paycheck to support your family? And again, there's nothing wrong with taking a job because it pays really well. Again, we're talking about like holistic life. Sometimes that's what your work for you needs to be. But kind of thinking deeper about like, what is work for? Like, why do you work, right? What does it mean to you to do work? And thinking about how this relates to others, I think the most meaningful work is often work you do in service of something bigger than yourself, right? So what are you doing that contributes to society or community? And I think a lot of this is also how we frame what we do. I mean, I think it's easy sometimes to think what you do doesn't maybe have an immediate impact on people, but kind of framing as to what's the bigger purpose of what you're doing and how does it affect others. So thinking about, what defines meaningful work for you. We've kind of already said, like, where does money fit into all of this? And again, that may vary from person to person. So that's kind of, what this piece should think about. Sort of higher order, what is work? Where does money fit in? How does it contribute to society? And then, where do you see your own like experience and growth and fulfillment fitting into that?
Yeah, I think I think the real piece here is like why work, like the importance, like why is it that you work, and what is it that you're trying to do with work in your life? What does meaningful work mean for you? So life is sort of the way that the authors talk about life view is the sort of ultimate concerns, sort of the big philosophical questions that as humans we've been asking for a very long time. Why are we here? What's the purpose? What's the role of justice? All the big sort of capital letters. Where does community fit in? Where does like a higher power fit in terms of like your life view? And the goal here is that we're all going to have different work views and different life views. But again, the goal is to think about how these things connect, right? So how your work and your life view are complementary, how they contrast, and where we might sort of connect them, and where we might have to think about some compromises being done. So we'll give you a few minutes. I'll roll back again. What we're looking for you to sort of to define with helping young people. So someone that finds like new challenges rewarding, trying to connect that with helping young people. Really great. Yeah, these are really great answers, everyone, and we really appreciate your responses and for participating and engaging in the talk. So we're going to move on to our last activity that we have. So just before we move on, though, I just wanted to sort of stop and reinforce that like the goal here isn't so much self-assessment as self-reflection. That is like understanding that the goal behind these activities is that at any moment in your life, whether that is choosing, you have the opportunity to advance in your career, you're thinking about transitioning into industry, you're thinking about applying for a postdoc outside of your, like right after your PhD. The goal behind these activities are that these are things that you can do to help you sort of understand where you are. That is, that they're like orienteering activities. That is, they sort of, the way the authors talk about them are that they're a way for you to know your compass. That is, to like have a compass that is, no one knows you better than you. And so this is a way, these activities sort of allow you to form a compass that through self-reflection can help you not make, as John Donne sort of, returning to his quote, not make your life into a jail, but to be like extremely self-aware and reflective. So Chris, I really like this activity, but I'm gonna let you go ahead and lead us through it. It's the multiverse of your life. So Chris, go ahead.
Sure. So this kind of comes out again of our Designing Your Life book. And basically the point of this activity is to realize that there's more than one meaningful life out there for all of us. And this is going to hopefully help you think about what those might be. So these are our 3 lives that you're going to think about in terms of like 3 to 5 years in the future. So our first one is basically your current plan. So it's like your life, but better. So what is the current plan? So obviously most of you are in training, but you have some like plan A that you're thinking about. So that might be in 3 to 5 years, you're an assistant professor or you're a research scientist at Pfizer or whatever. So thinking about what that life looks like, the like life where your things going according to plan, right? Life 2 will be our alternative timeline. So if the robots or AI took job 1 and you can't do that thing anymore, what does that future look like? So it's got to be something different than thing 1. So this is like plan A1 or A prime, or whatever you want to call it. And then life 3 is sort of our wild card bold timeline where you don't have to worry about making money, but you're just doing something because you enjoy it. And again, it has to be different than thing 1 and thing 2. And there's no judgment for thing 3. So it could be something crazy, like, I don't know, like you become a circus clown or something. But we want you to think about the 3 U's and really visualize like, what does that life look like for you in 3 to 5 years out? And what are you doing and how do you feel about it? So we're gonna like self-reflect on that for a while. And again, these 3 things should be different, not just derivations of the same thing. And the Designing Your Life people have polled students and found most people feel like they have 5 to 7 distinct lives in them that they would be equally happy doing. So again, the whole point of this is for you to start identifying what those lives, alternative lives, look like for you, and that there's more than just one life out there you could live and be fulfilled in.
Oh, that's a great question, Chris, in the chat. So the question is, should we come up with specific positions or jobs? I think that's the idea here. The idea here is that you should come up. So if I were doing this, right, and it, the robots came and took professional development away and accelerate the industry away, my next one with no robots would be probably something along the lines of, so I like to, I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so I would probably try to incorporate something in that. So maybe teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then, sort of my third one, the bold timeline, that money is no object and no one was sort of judging me, might be something like, I would probably open a microbrewery or something like that. I'm really passionate about fermentation sciences and I enjoy that. So yeah, I think that the key here is to create or to think about these different lives in relationship to the positions that you might hold in each of them.
And
And
you
then, go ahead, Chris.
and you may not know what that thing is called, right? But you know what you're doing, right? So you might not know the title,
exactly.
but like, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. And the goal here in doing 3 different ones is really to think about why those, and what are you getting from each of them, right? So each choice that you're making, you know, why jujitsu, why national parks, doing outdoor activities like camping, hiking, diving, and boating. Nice. Someone else said that they really like the idea of singing as well. Yeah, these are really fantastic. All of your ideas are really great.
Yeah, the other thing I would quickly add here is it's useful to think if there's a common theme that's coming up in your 3 U's. So is it
Yes.
you're helping people, or you're teaching people, or you're building something? So what is the core thing that maybe is coming out? And that's
Yeah.
probably fundamentally important to you. That's if it comes through repeatedly.
Yeah, that's I think that's a great point, Chris. You know, the first time that I was presented with this activity, I realized when I went to like Brazil, like teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I just figured out something else that I could teach and engage with students, and continue to help them sort of build their skills and work on them, and work on improving them. So yeah, I think that that's really important to sort of think about these 3 different lives, like some of the key themes that come out, and thinking about where they're, you know, what do they share, or what are they rather. All right, so these are all fantastic. I like, someone just said life 3 would be an opera singer. That's amazing. Um, Yeah, these are all fantastic. You've all got, this has been a really great activity. So we're going to move on. Um, and so the goal behind this activity, right, is that whatever these are, even if you don't know the positions, someone out there is living the life, that one of these lives that you've imagined. And so the idea behind this is that once you've sort of imagined these and you have this like ideation, that the next step would be for you to contact that person and to reach out for an informational interview, as we sort of refer to them as an informational interview. We only have the span of an hour here, and we want to get to the question and answer portion of the workshop. But I do want to point out that on June 10th from 1:30 to 2:30, we're going to talk about making connections. There's another interactive workshop about making connections and what an informational interview is, how to use networking in order to begin to reach out to find individuals to do these informational interviews with. Chris, is there anything you would like to add to that in terms of like the informational interviewing?
I mean, for the sake of time, I will go off on like a tangent, but I mean, I think the whole point is like, it's very different what you imagine versus what it is. So the point of talking to people in the role is to understand what is it really like in the role. And what you will probably see is a role can look very different depending on who the employer is, right? So you could look very different being a software engineer at Facebook or Google if the culture is different. So the whole point of information is to figure out like what is it like to do the thing at a place, and to figure out where does it fit with what you expect it to be or what you value. So the only way you can do that is by talking to people who are doing the things in the real world.
Yeah, I think that's key too. You know, as you begin your job search and you see hiring managers and HR recruiters come up with job descriptions, and quite often the day-to-day and what duties are being done in the day-to-day is not missing, but it's difficult to sort of read between the lines of what that role is and what's being done. And I think the informational interview is a great way to ascertain what that is. They're also, uh, I agree with you. We should continue to move on, but they're also great for like gap analysis as well, in terms of your professional development. All right, so we wanted to sort of offer a few resources that we think are very valuable and that helped us put together this talk, but also we use when we talk with students about career exploration and career assessment and things. So the first one is a TED Talk that's done at Stanford by the authors of the text who have these three activities that we just walked you through. The second one is Imagine PhD, which is for sort of skills assessment and career exploration for humanists and social scientists. There's a sort of great set of resources that are also on the Imagine PhD website, and that's a direct link. And again, we're going to share all of this with you via email in terms of our slides and things, so you'll have all of these. And then, Chris, do you want to talk about some of the IDPs?
Sure. So there's a Chem IDP for our chemist in the audience. And then there's also a My IDP from Science Careers, which I can drop in the chat or we can put in the slides. It doesn't really matter. Yes. But those are both geared more toward people with scientific backgrounds, but it functions very similar to the Imagine PhD. So all three of those have built-in online skills and interest assessments you can do on your own time. All of these are free, and then they will map them onto potential career families or job families that you can explore more to see what is that thing. So this kind of gets to like, you may not know the title, but it will start to give you some idea about like, here are some jobs in this broad family of, someone said science communication. So like, what are jobs like in that thing? And you can explore further in to understand common position titles, what sort of national organizations are there for you to engage with to better, find people who do those things. So the Imagine PhD has a wealth of resources. The other two are good, but the Imagine PhD has a lot of extra resources to help you really delve into the careers, not just exploring them, but connecting with people that do them, to building the skills you need to be successful and to ultimately apply to them. So, but they're all great resources.
Yeah, great. So we have a couple of questions I see in the chat that we can immediately turn to, which are about whether we're going to provide the slides. We will provide the slides and share everything with you in terms of the resources so that you can spend some more time doing all of this. This is a very sort of introductory workshop on career exploration, and it's with the hope and benefit that, in a few months, things can start to readjust and you can do these assessments again. So that's the goal of the activities. We're going to share the PowerPoint with all of you, as well as and it'll have links to all of the resources. Thanks everyone for joining us. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate your engagement. And we look forward to seeing you all at our next Zoom presentation later this week. It's been fantastic seeing everyone from across, all the graduate students from across the US and all of our academic partners joining our grad pack for job search strategies. This has been super energizing and exciting for